Welcome to Midwest Paratalk Radio. Midwest Paratalk Radio is brought to you by WMPP Digital Broadcasting. You can catch Midwest Paratalk Radio on all podcast platforms as well as on YouTube at Midwest Paratalk Radio. And here are your hosts, Deb and Gregg.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Midwest Paratalk Radio. I'm Deb, and there's Greg sitting over there all sick and everything. So he's kind of lost his voice, so I'm going to have to pick up the slack. Normally it's, he's the brains and I'm the beauty, but this time we have to switch it around.
Shouldn't that be Beauty and the Beast?
Yeah, you're right. Anyway, so thanks for coming, everybody. We have a really special guest tonight. I say I because I'm a little possessive of him. He's a friend of mine. His name is James Lough, and he is a retired lawyer, professor, and also a lifelong experiencer of the UFO phenomenon type. He had practiced law for 40 years or more, maybe at this point now. How long, Jim? Long time?
Too long.
He specialized in municipal law, election law, constitutional law, and appellate litigation. He's since an early age, he's also had lifelong contact with extraterrestrial, and finally started talking public about it in 2014. He's done a lot of lectures and as far as civil rights issues for experiencers in recent years goes. And he's also the author of the UFO Briefing Book. It's a guide to Congressional Oversight of the UAP Phenomenon. And this book has been supplied to members of Congress on each committee that will receive the report from the Director of National Intelligence. So, and I have read a copy of it, and it's pretty interesting stuff. Jim is my go-to guy for everything UAP, American government stuff, all the things that have been coming out, you've been seeing lately on the news. And I feel very fortunate to know him. I've learned a lot of stuff from him. So I want to welcome him to Midwest Paratalk Radio. Thank you for being our guest tonight, Jim.
Well, thanks, Deb. Thanks, Greg.
I don't know. I feel like I want to jump right into everything since we had that revelation today about the new guy that's coming in. And I've lost my notes. Hold on.
Oh, I suck at this. The name's not important.
Okay. It's that bad, huh?
Well, it's interesting because the Department of Defense appoints the head of Aero, and the other day the head of Aero, Sean Kirkpatrick, announced that he was retiring.
And Aero is the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. It's a part of the government, right?
That it's the UFO UAP organization agency that's supposed to be studying this under the legislation passed by Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was interesting that here he left under interest to the outside world. He just wanted to retire and spend more time at home, I guess, because he was originally going to retire and then took the Aero job. And to announce his retirement right in the middle of what they're doing is quite interesting. And then to have ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, appoints the deputy director. What they've done is they appointed someone who I don't know much about yet, because you never know about these people. They live their careers, behind the scenes in intelligence. And so they now control the organization once Kirkpatrick leaves in December.
So, regarding the UFO Briefing Book that you wrote, what prompted you? What spurred you on to want to do that to begin with?
In the summer of 2020, the Senate Intelligence Committee, at the time the Republicans were in control, and so Marco Rubio, this Republican senator from Florida, was the chair. And the Senate Intelligence Committee is a little more bipartisan and collegial than most of the committees in Congress. And when he put out the request for a report from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence about UAP, it immediately got my attention. And I was writing another book, and I just dropped everything and started writing the UFO Briefing Book, not intended for the general audience. I know you've been real kind to say it's nice, but it's a lot of, I joke with my friends in government that I just crossed out the word wastewater treatment plant and put in UFOs. And because there's a way government works, the process works. And so I knew that was the point, to get them, information that will help them, because if you remember about that time, you started having a small number of elected officials popping up and saying, we're not getting enough information about this. And usually they rely heavily on staff to help them out. And the staff that would be helping them from the intelligence community and the DOD, the Department of Defense, I'll try not to use too many acronyms. They're basically on the other side. They've been hiding this for 80 years. And so, they didn't have a staff. And so as a retired city manager, a good friend of mine, said after reading it, he goes, it reads like a 128-page staff report. And so the goal was for me to talk to Congress and give them a different view, because with the debunking that started in the early 50s and the now they call it stigma behind it, they're not going to get neutral information. And I wrote it not in a way to prove that UFOs are real or anything else, but to give them sort of guideposts of what they should do. And so far, I'm pretty happy with where they've gone with things so far. I know people in the UFO community are saying they're not moving fast enough. And to me, the steps that have been taken so far are, pretty fast for government. Government does not move fast. And, when it does, the joke is ready, fire, aim. And so, you just can't ask elected officials who stand at the ballot box, every 4 or 6 years or whatever. And you can't just ask them to just jump into something they know nothing about without some background. And I've been amazed at the bipartisanship of this at the time, because this was written and delivered to them on March and April of 2021. And they received the report from the first preliminary assessment from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, using the stuff from the UAP task force, with the Navy pushed the issue and got it on the front burner. They're not really going to know how to handle it unless they have, sort of governmentese, language about how to do it. And so I recommended things like having them use sort of releasing of private records or public records, excuse me, behind the scenes through different steps like making sure that people who have signed non-disclosure agreements can talk, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I counted up, I had 4 major issues that I was talking, and they put into law 3 of them. Nice. And they're trying to put in the 4th right now. But I was happy with the response. Not so much, that they were listening to me, but any person that knows how government works would have pretty much recommended the same thing. And so I'm not taking credit for it. But,
yeah, but I can't think of anything. I can't think of anybody better suited to do what you did than you. You're with the knowledge and the background that you have. And, it got people's attention. I mean, when they read it, they realized this wasn't some kook crackpot, just sending off something, you know what I mean? This was really a legitimate blueprint that offered here. And I was tickled. I was very tickled, very proud to be your friend. What kind of, did you get any individual responses from when you sent these out? I can't believe you sent those out.
Yeah, I sent out 300 of them.
That is just blows my mind.
Yeah. And I don't say that in front of my wife. She'll want to know where I got all the money.
How much it costs. Yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't take a vacation that year, but,
God love you.
I got more responses from people that used to be in government. I got a very encouraging letter from Harry Reid before he passed away about he said it was done well, and most people say well done, but the correct way to say it is done well.
Done well.
And I still have a personal, I can't dig it out now, I can't find it, but I've still got a personal note from him. And I got lots of other sort of strange responses from people. Most of them were, I'm really happy you're doing this, but don't tell anyone I talked to you. But one thing out of it is I didn't send a copy to President Biden, but I sent him, I worked on a few policy papers with Robert Salas, who was probably the first Hispanic Air Force graduate ever. And there's no records for that, but
and he was in the, what was that?
The Maelstrom nuclear. He was one of the 2 nuclear launch officers whenever a flight of 10 ICBMs were brought offline by a orange glowing UFO.
Yep. And he testified before Congress over that, didn't he?
Not in front of Congress, to Arrow, which
okay.
they didn't do anything about it. And a lot of the retired people that testified, when Sean Kirkpatrick would talk that we have no information that says there's a threat, he's basically ignoring the testimony that they've had.
Yeah.
And but it's mostly been retired people that have talked to Arrow. Mm-hmm. It'd be nice that they actually would start talking to real people that are involved with it right now.
Yes.
And because you can always throw questions at the motivations of somebody out of the service, but you can't lie. You can't lie to Congress or to anyone else without having disciplinary problems. So,
right.
The Senate, has put together some good legislation, and the House Intel and Armed Services committees too, that have helped, loosen up the line. And one of them's the whistleblower protections, which are starting to pay dividends. They did that 2 years ago, and David Grush was the first one, and you saw the response from, Sean Kirkpatrick, and afterwards, basically trashing him.
Yeah,
And
they went after him bad.
yeah, when we talk about how he left, I could sort of go through. I think
Yeah.
that was one of the reasons he's not there anymore.
Hmm. Yeah, David Grush was the whistleblower. That there was him and two other folks. I can't remember right now who they were. I watched these hearings on C-SPAN when they had those hearings on it, and the things they said stuff like the United States government has uh, X amount of UFOs or UAPs are in their possession, and they back engineer them, stuff like that. Um, and then these guys, you know, especially David, it all of a sudden after all these testimony, it comes somebody leaks that he has PTSD and he has. They start leaking his medical history and stuff like it's supposed to make him people not believe him. You know, like they're trying to discredit his testimony.
See, one of the things that I wonder about is when you have a lot of stuff like that coming out anytime someone comes out, and it, to me, looking from the outside, a lot of people in the UFO community say there's a vast conspiracy to do this or that. Well, the latest information we're receiving about things that are going on tell me that, there may be a lot of people in the defense and intelligence community in different programs or agencies that are trying to keep a lid on it. But there are a lot of people involved in the defense and intelligence community that aren't. They're trying to release things. And so I think there's sort of an internal battle going on.
Yeah, that's kind of.
Yeah. And so, like, one example was that leak. The way that the whole thing has moved forward has been in sort of stop and start. And because here you have in 2017, on my birthday, December 16th, 2017, Politico and New York Times released those 3 videos, Gimbal, Go Fast, and FLIR. And it just revolutionized things. Those were released by the Defense Intelligence Agency. If there was a vast conspiracy covering the whole military and the whole defense or intelligence community, they wouldn't have released those. And so it's been an interplay. I know that Lou Elizondo asked them to, but they still had to do it.
Yeah.
And so you talk about me. What I've been really impressed with is Chris Mellon, a former senior defense official and undersecretary of defense, and Lou Elizondo, because they know the inside of what Lou knows, how the whole ATIP program started, the first one that Harry Reid set up in 2007. And Chris Mellon knows how the Defense Department works. And so, I try to stay in my lane and just talk about legal and related governmental process issues on how to do things. And they're great advocates for our thing, but they really don't. They're advocates because they know there's a problem. It's not that they're experiencers or whatever.
There's all kinds of points of view out there in the UFO world right now. There's a lot of differing opinions about Lou and his role in this whole thing. I've never met him. I don't fully understand all of it, but do you think there's anything to be worried about with those guys?
Well, by worry, the thing is they're defense officials, and so they're going to see things from a different perspective than us. Like people talk about, they're always pushing threat. It's a threat, but from a defense perspective, you have these objects that perform, it's like handing a caveman a cell phone. If they knew how to use it, it'd be a real powerful weapon.
Yeah.
But, they'll think it's an evil spirit because it's talking. But they see it from, we've got this mystery that's a technologically advanced far beyond us. And so they have the potential or the capability to do us harm. What they don't know is if they have the intent.
Right.
And my thinking is there's not going to be a military takeover, because why would they wait till we get jets at space, space lasers like Marjorie Taylor Greene talks about. And
they could have killed us. They could have wiped us out decades ago if that was their intention, but I do get the angle of trying to present it as a threat, at least to the government. I don't like it per se, because I always feel like, I don't like people to be afraid of anything that's not known. And I feel like I've had contact with something, and I'm still here. And like I said, if they wanted to take us out, they could have done it a long, long time ago. But I also get the fact that they need to have something they can show to the government that says, here, we need the money for this because this is a threat to us. Even in my mind, I'm thinking we're a threat to ourselves. We have our own airplanes that crash into each other up in the sky all the time, So I've heard very few stories about UFOs crashing into airplanes, but I've heard a lot of stories about airplanes crashing into airplanes. But, whatever it takes to get the funding and the people and the eyes and to look at it, I guess, to start out anyway.
I sort of believe the way Marco Rubio does, the senator from Florida. He said, I hope they're from someplace else, because if they're from here, we're in trouble.
Right.
And I think that's a good way to put it. But at this point, think of it as an onion. We're just the outer layers. And so having people like, that have been involved, like Chris Sutton and Lou Elizondo, is very valuable. The question is where they're going to be when the layers are pulled off. They may be with us, they may not be. Probably will, but the thing is that even we, spend our whole lives being involved in this. We don't know what they're doing. We really don't.
No.
And so, from my perspective, the reason I just dropped everything and wrote that book is there has to be a process, because if things are just released, oh my God, there's aliens here and they're going to kill us, you will have panic in the streets. And not that we're going to have the War of the Worlds scenario, which my grandmother was scared to death of. She was listening to it. She came in after the initial disclaimer and turned it on and was freaked out. And
didn't know that it was a radio show. Thought it was real.
She thought it was real.
Yeah,
and
bless her heart.
She spoke with real emotion. She was, a young mother at the time, or no, it was just before. Yeah, she was a young mother at the time. That's right. But think about it also from the political people's perspective. I think it was 1988, Dennis Kucinich was running for president. He was one of the many candidates.
I remember him.
The one question from Tim Russert destroyed his career.
Exactly.
And that was, you believe in UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to sit for a long time. And it's a real problem. And so the big change now is we may not have the Defense Department on our side, but we have the Senate and we have the House on our side on this.
Yeah, and they've set up that thing where pilots and military people can actually. There's a website now, isn't there, or a place they can go where they can file reports?
Yeah, it took them a year to do it, but yeah. I mean,
it's not for everybody, but it's for the military, right?
Military. Well, civilian pilots too. They had 100 in the latest report that came out in mid-October. They had 100 reports just from civilian commercial airlines. And think back in 1986, Japan Airlines flying over Alaska to Japan, coming from Europe. It had, I guess, an aircraft carrier size UFO that chased it for 30 minutes, and it's on radar tape and everything else. And the CIA took all of that. But because the pilot of the Japan airline plane, that was the cargo plane, he was put in a desk job immediately by Japan Airlines, just because his name came up and he was talking about it. So it's really hard to get pilots to, loosen up and actually talk about what they've seen. And so you're starting, to me, what really turned things around is probably after the 2017 release. In 2018 and 19, the Senate Intelligence Committee and probably also Armed Services, they were quietly interviewing some of the pilots that were involved in these things. And so all of a sudden, they've gone through now, they've adopted 2 straight rounds of legislation to establish all these UFO rules. And they've been getting tougher over time. In fact, the current bill, for the 3rd year in a row, pending, would force clandestine programs that are reverse engineering UFOs to declare themselves to Congress. And so you have the Senate Intelligence Committee telling the world, by putting in that legislation, that we have enough evidence to know that we don't have control over things. That's a hard thing for a politician to say. And, unfortunately, all the craziness that's going on with, on the Republican side, with just government not running. The Senate still okay, but you can't pass legislation. So that legislation will probably sit there, and much to the happiness of the defense and intelligence community. So in that time period of 2018 and 19, when they're interviewing these people, you can almost look back and see how their minds clicked and realized, oh crap, this stuff is real. What do we do with it? Well, they can't walk out on the Senate floor and say, we think there are aliens. No, they've got to do their homework. They've got to interview. That's when they asked for the report in 2020. And so I sort of think back to Dr. John Mack, the Harvard psychiatrist that was very influential at the beginning of really sort of the, as I call it, the experiencer phenomena, where things sort of changed from they're all evil, and he brought in a new sort of trend. He talked about how people that have had these experiences, it sort of shatters their worldview, and he called it ontological shock. And when you hear these senators talking, they're used to talking to the press. They're very good at talking about, and downplaying things they don't want to say, and emphasizing things they do want to say that helps their narrative. But when they talk about this, I think back to how, when I realized, wait, this stuff is real. When a person they shatters their worldview, is some people fall apart, some people sort of put it in a lockbox and like Al Gore's Social Security and put it away. And but others just say, wait a minute, I'm not putting up with this. I belong to a group, CERO, Close Encounters Resource Organization.
Me too.
And you do too. That's right. And I sort of lost my train of thought where I was going with that. But no, they have lots of people. Yvonne Smith, who runs it, has lots of people that she regresses, or a lot of people she just talks to them. Not everything's by hypnosis. And
no, not at all.
People have no place to turn, but they know that reality isn't what they thought it was. Sort of like the paranormal. Sure, it's fun to watch Ghostbusters on a movie, and it's fun to think about, and then go to the X-Men movie or whatever.
Yeah.
But whenever it happens, you guys see it. You're paranormal investigators. These people are wide-eyed, and they just have a focus to them that, wait a minute, this isn't what I was told. And
and there's some paranormal investigators that, when they finally catch some legitimate evidence, they take off running and screaming in the opposite direction.
It's like the dog that finally caught the car.
Right. What are you going to do with it now? Yeah.
And so when you listen to, we're not talking about wacky congressmen or senators in the fringe. We're talking about Mark Warner, the moderate senator from Virginia, who's now chair of the Senate Intel Committee. I mean, when you read his stuff, what they do is every year when they pass out the various bills, they include a committee report. And Mark Warner signed off on a committee report that said the purpose of this is to make sure Arrow passes along all man-made objects to their proper authorities and keeps the ones that aren't. Well, what does that tell you?
Yep.
If it's not man-made, I mean, that's a United States senator of some influence. And so they take this stuff to the floor. In 2021, they put in place, it's 1 year, they're doing the budget for the next year and all the legislation that goes along with that. And so in 2021, when they put this stuff together, I was thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen when it goes to a vote? You're going to have people trying to pull the UFO stuff out, and try to make fun of the Democrats or the Republicans or whoever they were trying to bash over this. Not a single person out of 535 members of government, elected members of government, raised one peep, and it just went through. The last 3 years have had the Senate Intel Committee has passed out every single UFO thing. I still refer to it as UFOs. I default to that.
It's never going to be UAPs to me. I don't care how they want to change it around to take the stigma away from it. It ain't going to work.
And it was UFO was the Air Force's way to take away flying saucers.
Yeah.
They invented that phrase to stop.
To get rid of the flying saucer phrase.
Yeah, exactly. And my dad used to talk about Foo Fighters during World War II.
And bogeys.
Yep. And so they have focused on this, and the language of what they write in these reports tells the rest of the Congress We know what we're talking about.
Mhm.
And when a new speaker of the House or a new Senate majority leader or minority leader on either side, when they start appointing people to different committees, the Intelligence Committee they do everything in secret, because you can't, oh, we've got this information about Iran and they may launch an attack. Let's go out in the Senate floor and talk about it. No, they keep everything secret. And so they have to have members that have the trust of their colleagues.
Right.
I can't tell you this, but you damn well better pay attention.
And I saw that over and over again throughout those, hearings.
Just think, okay, they had, in 2021, they passed the original UAP law. In 2022, because they were already upset it wasn't being implemented properly, they passed another one. And now for 2023, for the 2024 fiscal year, they've got another set of bills, and they're all coordinated.
Yeah, and we started out saying that people think that the new generation here in ufology are complaining because it's going so slow. But you and I have been around for 40 years, and honestly, I've seen more movement in the last 4 years than I've ever seen in my life, and I'm shocked by it. And knowing how the government moves, I know how important this is and what a big deal this is.
Well, it's people that don't know how government works.
Mm-hmm.
As simple as that.
Yeah.
But okay, what happens when a legislative body like Congress or a state legislature passes a bill in a particular session? That a session is 1 year. They're done. They go back to their constituents. We fix that problem. It's going to work out. Blah blah blah. But they do this when you have a bill the second year. There are two main reasons. One is that the president who signed it's not implementing it, and so at least one party is going to be taking shots at the president when they do another one. The other reason is they made a mistake. They made a technical mistake in the bill. And so the next time they do a curative bit of legislation to fix it. This was neither. President Biden, when he signed the first bill, issued the defense annual bill, funding bill. He issued a signing statement saying, Congress has put some requirements on us that I can't release confidential classified information to give it to them, and I'm not going to risk, anything. So I'll comply with the laws in this bill, this 4,000-page bill, but I'm not going to comply. And then said, I'm not going to send reports to Congress on, and then he named a few topics. He didn't name the UFO one, even though it was a 5-year program. And no, there hasn't been a single person say that the White House has held things up. See, I don't think the Trump administration had a clue as what was going on as this was bubbling up. And I think the Biden administration is just letting Joe Biden's a former senator. He's letting the Senate run with this.
Yeah.
And so, he's got a few other problems going on right now. So in Ukraine and the Middle East and whatever. But
that's definitely going to take priority, I'm sure.
But this is long term. And so, you've got a committed group that has convinced the rest of Congress that they're on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have yet to have one rep in the House or in the Senate to seek an amendment to knock this stuff out. Not one.
Yeah, that's
you can't tell me that trying to pick a Rand Paul on one side,
Mhm.
or, you know, you know,
I've been waiting
Costco.
for them to do that, and it hasn't happened. So
No.
I'm like,
And so that tells you what they're doing is the Republicans and Democrats are fighting like cats and dogs over everything except this.
yeah.
And they're jumping off the bridge holding hands on this one.
Yeah. We have a question in the chat room. JV wants to know if you think we'll ever have full disclosure.
Eventually, I honestly think unless something splits this bipartisan coalition,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not giving up. I mean, I have never seen a subject like this have 3 straight years of legislation trying to order the bureaucracy to do what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Because, people talk about the deep state and all that. There's people's jobs at stake. People aren't going to, within a bureaucracy, people aren't, they're going to try to do the right thing most of the time. They're just regular people. They're good people. They're bad people. Good cops, bad cops. Every profession has it, Wall Street or whatever. But they just keep hammering at this every year. And the legislation, it's called an iterative process. They do one thing and they see the result. And then whatever doesn't get fixed, they do something else. And they just keep tightening the screws. And so it may take a while. And the younger people, that look at this are going to say it's taken forever. But like you said, 1942 was the first reported sighting in a flight log of a UFO by the Army Air Corps. That's how long it's been going on, and maybe before that we don't know about.
But to me, the fact that it's still there, that they haven't just blown it all out of the water and said, be done with it and everything, tells me they've seen things. They know things that will knock your socks off. And that's why some of the things that I've heard that David Grush talked about, I tend to feel like he's probably speaking truth to this, because it would take something like that for these two different parties to come together and be bipartisan on this one thing. It's something that would affect all of humanity and this entire planet and everything about it, and it's a big deal. They did give him he got a skiff? Didn't he finally get a skiff to talk to them?
Yeah.
A lot of things during the hearings he couldn't answer because it was classified. And in order to speak of such things, it would have to be done in a skiff at a secured area. And they kept telling me they were going to get one. And I kept hearing that he hadn't gotten one. They weren't going to do it. And then all of a sudden I'm hearing now that he did get a skiff. So
well, the problem, just I gave a roundabout answer, but I think full disclosure will happen, but it's going to be several years, because once they agree that it's for real and everyone agrees with that, what are they going to do? Just run out and say, yep, well, you have a plan? No, we haven't even thought about that yet. No, They're government. They plan things. And so they've got, and that the Defense Department intelligence community hasn't planned for them. So it may take a while and people are going to be frustrated.
mm-hmm.
But think about this. What's different about today is that you had many people all through from, back to Robert Salas in 1967, people before that, through the Nimitz people, people in, the military. I know several people in the military who had UFO experiences. And there's a couple ways you can deal with it whenever, You report it, and then you're told, here, sign this. You're never going to talk about this. Well, you can do a couple things. You can just, okay, go back to work, get your pension, get out. Some people can't do that, and that's that ontological shock. All of a sudden, they've seen everything is different than I thought. And if you're in the military and you're trying to say to your commander, we just had 10 ICBMs, each with 4 nuclear weapons on them, shut down. What if the Russians had attacked us at that point? And so they're obviously going to want to shake everyone and say, you've got to pay attention to this. Well, some of them just up and quit. And it's hard. That's what I would have done too. But people have left their careers before their pensions have vested.
Oh, yeah.
And we have SERO members like that.
Mm-hmm.
And but what you've got is today, we've had the whistleblower law since 1989, but who's going to listen to you? Well, now they have Congress listening to them. And so that'll help. It was you talked about the, Dave Grush. He was testifying in front of the House Oversight, one of their subcommittees. And they were several of the Republicans were complaining that they couldn't get classified testimony. Well, the reason they couldn't is because when the UFO law was drafted, the Armed Services and Intelligence Committees in the House and the Senate pretty much agreed that let's limit this to certain, the classified stuff. Let's limit this to what are called appropriate committees. And the appropriate committees are the ones that deal with the military all the time. So that's one of the reasons it's sort of pigeonholed there. It was interesting here. Jim Comer, the head of House Oversight, which is probably the most partisan regular committee in Congress at this point. He got to hold the hearing, and they announced they were going to have hearings. And so what happens within a week or so of that? Chuck Schumer is a co-sponsor of a bill to set up a commission like the Kennedy assassination records to allow for this committee to look through all the UFO records, and every record that's 25 years or older is assumed to be eligible to be declassified unless the agency holding the record can prove to a citizen committee, not to the military or not to the intelligence committee, but to a citizens committee by clear and convincing evidence, which in civil law that's as high as you get in civil law. It's a hard standard to get over. Wow. That record has to be held on for some reason. So stuff dealing with nuclear weapons might still stay in. But 25 years in my UFO briefing book, I remember drafting it, and I put in a clause saying that they should change the Freedom of Information Act to release UFO records and assume that those for 20 years or older. I originally put 25, and I go, if I put 25, they'll do 30.
Yeah.
And so I did 20.
And they did 25.
They did 25. And that's, but see, that's a standard dividing line. It's not like I know something. You know, that's the standard dividing line. And so these records are going to start coming out. And so the bill, first of all, it's co-sponsored by Chuck Schumer, who's the Senate Majority Leader. The Speaker of the House, the Minority Leaders, and the Senate Majority Leader never draft legislation. They never sponsor legislation. They're not on any committees. They never do it. Chuck Schumer helped sponsor this one.
Well, that's a big deal.
Who did he write in to be the oversight of that, commission? He wrote in the House Oversight Committee, the most partisan anti-Democrat committee in the whole Congress. And he gave them the keys to it. So he gave them a part of the deal. So you don't get much more bipartisan than handing your biggest enemy the keys to something really important.
Yeah.
And so this is the kind of stuff they don't talk about because the normal press coverage of this, you've got the UFO community writes about it and they're upset and they're going to write bad things. But on the other side, most of the reporters that report on this stuff are defense reporters. And those defense reporters, what did they do to get a story? Pick up the phone, call one of their sources in the Pentagon and get what they want. Well, they call and they're getting, no, there's nothing to this UFO stuff. If you want an indicator of the opinion, the attitude of the reporter writing the story, look for the word enthusiast.
Yeah.
Because the ones that are traditionally, reporters that cover the Pentagon that don't believe this stuff, they all say enthusiast. In the CIA history of UFO stuff, we're called UFO buffs.
Buffs.
Buff is like model train buff, something unimportant. And I noticed this whenever the first annual report required by law in 2022, it was supposed to come out on Halloween last year, and it didn't. And then all these articles started popping up saying, soon to be released report, any day now, and all this. And almost every one of the traditional defense reporters had a line in there that said, UFO enthusiasts will be disappointed because no aliens will be revealed in this report. And you can track that through about 10 or 15 articles. And so the use of the word, in fact, there was an article in Defense One. It's one of the defense websites, publications that's probably funded by Boeing and all the, they get all their money. It's a nonprofit. Well, but it's a good source for information. And so they interviewed Sean Kirkpatrick, and that popped up I believe that popped up in that one. Yeah, it did. And then this recent one, Politico, that came out today about the appointment of the new assistant director.
Right. But
it was interesting because the one where Sean Kirkpatrick, talked to you could tell it was a traditional reporter because, used all the buzzwords like that. But he said that the purpose of the article was to say why they're not looking at the radar tapes and the infrared and all the electronic equipment or readings from the USS Princeton, which was the main sensor location for the Nimitz carrier group. And he said, Well, that was happened a long time ago. And, you know, they routinely destroy all those things within 24 hours so they can recycle the, you know, the tapes back then. Well, he said that. And it is interesting. All you have to do is go on YouTube, and people that were on the Princeton at the time that witnessed all this said that right afterwards, a bunch of people showed up in Air Force uniforms and took all the radar tapes and the infrared and everything else. Mm-hmm. And this was something that was said 2009, you know.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to, you know, pass off, because Fravor talked in front of that committee when Grush talked. Fravor was the pilot that saw.
Right. Yes.
That actually saw. He and Alex, I can't think of her last name right now, but he actually saw it. And so their excuse is, well, we don't have any sensor data. Well, yeah, they do. Either they have it or it was destroyed by somebody.
Yeah.
And within a week, within 5 days, Kirkpatrick retires.
Mm-hmm.
He pulled 2 stunts that probably cost him his job. That one, because what he did is he just shined a spotlight on the fact that they were all removed.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing was, after Grush testified last July, Sean Kirkpatrick went on LinkedIn and wrote a screed about the committee for doing this without talking to him. And also that Grush never worked for Arrow, and, you know, none of this stuff we haven't seen any evidence of this, and just trashed him.
Yeah.
And this is part of my lawyer background and having worked on First Amendment issues. If you're a public employee, you have a First Amendment right. You don't lose it. However, there are some things that you may know of that if you say something that'll affect your job, you lose your First Amendment right on that, because you can't cherry pick stuff just because the boss didn't agree with you and go out and tell the public. You can't do that. Well, that's exactly what Sean Kirkpatrick did. One of his jobs is to liaison with Congress, and he trashed everyone in Congress except the Senate Intelligence Committee. And so the Pentagon could have fired him on the spot for that. Mm-hmm. I've defended cases like that. You can fire people for using inside information that you acquired through your job. Mm-hmm. You know, you can speak on taxes, you can speak on anything, but that one. So those 2 things within a couple months of each other, I think.
Is why he decided to step down.
Yep. Or was told to step down.
Yeah. You either step down or
we'll never know. You know.
Yeah.
Unless someone leaks it like they did with Dave Grush.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of moving parts going on behind the scenes, and you know, I would know that I'm sorry to be so inside baseball on this, but it's sort of what's going on behind the scenes is more interesting than what's going on in public.
Oh, for sure. I'm quite sure that's the case. But I just, you know, it just, everything that's happening, it's happened to me, happening so quickly now from my eyes compared to the way it was, you know, 40 years ago. Do you think that they'll ever start asking people like us, you know, like me, that have been public with their experiences, you know, questions?
Well, that's that onion I talked about.
It's another layer of the onion, you know, the con maybe.
Deb, you're layer 27.
But I'm thinking about people like, um, Travis and Kathleen Martin and, with her aunt and uncle, but Barney and Betty Hill, and their experiences were so publicly known. And, of course, Calvin's not here. Calvin and Charlie aren't with us anymore from Pascagoula, but, some of the bigger cases that were known.
I don't know.
I just wonder about that sometimes. Or if
Well,
they'll try to avoid us at all costs.
Well, see, that's the thing. I mean, why all the secrecy?
Mm-hmm.
Why all the secrecy? If it was a threat, we'd hear about it. I mean,
you think they think maybe we would sue them if we found out the government knew all about this and had?
They've got immunities on stuff like this. There's no way. No, that's not going to happen.
It just popped in my head. I don't know.
Yeah, but no, I get asked that a lot.
Do you?
I've talked about civil rights, and we have rights, that are being violated, but I don't think there's going to be a remedy.
No, I've been thinking of the Cash Landrum ladies and the physical damage they had with this thing that they encountered that could possibly, have been extraterrestrial, if not that, at least government, and they died.
Yeah. And the Army facility that probably had the helicopter. This was a case in the 70s or early 80s, I think it was, that two ladies and a young boy were coming home from a bingo game, and a UFO was trailing smoke, flew over the top of them with a bunch of helicopters, military helicopters surrounding it, and it was spewing something out. And they later, one died and the other two had permanent injuries. And so no one would represent them, and a UFO advocate who's a lawyer, but not a civil lawyer. He was a public defender, stepped forward to bring their case. And he tried real hard, but when people lie, when you have people on the stand saying, nope, wasn't our helicopters,
Yeah.
And it had to be from someplace. And so the judge dismissed the case.
Yeah.
And the attorney I can't remember his name right now. He's from out west here someplace. But, it's really hard to even a good big plaintiff's firm to take on a case like that, let alone an individual attorney trying to do it. I mean, it did yeoman's work trying to do it, but the fix was in.
Yeah.
And you can't, I am still on the website where I'm allowed to get filings from cases in any court, federal court in the United States. There are no records for that case anymore.
Yeah.
And they have records from the period before and the period after, but that particular case you can't find a record for on the official government website for records of old cases and current ones.
Wow. We're getting close to the end of the program here, I think, pretty soon. And, but I don't know. I was going to ask Greg. Keep going. Okay. Greg owns the station. He can do what he wants. Yeah, this is so interesting. This is such good stuff here. And I just want to ask about what you think is coming up in the future with all of this. And do you plan on writing more things?
Well, I have a book that's with an editor right now. He just sent me back the version. It'll be coming out in about 3 months called Threat to the Body Politic.
Wow, that's a great title.
Foo Fighters to UAP. From Foo Fighters to UAP.
Mm-hmm.
And Threat to the Body Politic is the Robertson panel. The CIA, okay, in 1952, they had a big UFO wave across the whole country. But they also, 2 weekends in a row, had UFOs flying all around, including you can still get it on YouTube, a picture of a bunch of UFOs flying over the Capitol. And
I've seen that.
White House and everything else. Well, afterwards, they held the biggest press conference that the Pentagon ever held after World War II and said, oh, this is okay. And so Harry Truman brought the CIA into it. The new CIA and Air Force started in 1947. This is 52. Well, they got together with the Air Force, delayed things, finally formed the Robertson panel the last week of the Truman administration. So they issued the report to the Eisenhower administration. And that report basically says that one of the things is that that interest in this subject is a threat to the organs of the body politic. And so it was UFOs weren't a threat because they were all fake.
Poo-pooed away, yeah.
People who studied them had to be stopped to prevent mass panic and paranoia. And, anytime I want to know about social policy, like, group behavior or, psychology, I always hire 5 physicists. They didn't have a single psychiatrist I take that back. They had the Psychological Review Board of the CIA issue a report to the Robertson panel to help them, which is still classified.
Is this the book you were working on before when you
I was
stopped?
working on this before, and what I did is I expanded it, and so the first 2 chapters on what's going on today, all the legislation, and hopefully I've cut it down from 10,000 words to 4,000, so it won't, people won't put it down after the first chapter. Mm-hmm. And then the second chapter is why yesterday is important. And so I talk about what's happening today and how we could learn. They're coming right out of the same playbook on the way they're doing things. And then I go through what happened with the Robertson panel, and then I pick out examples through the years of how they've kept this going. And and then at the end, I talk about where it's going from here. Hmm. So I literally, I just got it back, and but I have redrafted it about 15 times because now I've got to add that Sean Kirkpatrick retired.
Yeah.
I got to hurry up and finish this before something else happens.
I know it's the never-ending story right now. It's so fluid and things are going.
Hope they shut the government down for a while, so nothing will happen. I can get my book out.
Yeah. I have a question from somebody. If they're hiding all of the UFO reports, the visuals and experiences, what is it that they're scared to expose?
Great question.
That was from Greg. This from the guy that can't talk because his voice is all messed up.
Okay. Well, see, that's the $64,000 question. That sure dates me.
No, I say that all the time.
I think it's the abductions, personally.
Yes.
Because if you're having people taken and you have no control over it, mm-hmm. and you have no control over your airspace, What are you going to do?
You don't want, you don't want to look like a weak government that can't protect its citizenry,
And some people say that they crashed, but there are too many crashes to be, we don't crash that often.
Right. And if they're coming from a higher, much more technologically advanced than us, it doesn't make sense that they're crashing anything, but it would make sense if we were shooting them down.
Yeah, it would be. But Roswell was, there was a lightning strike. And if you're just coming to a planet for the first time and
you don't know about lightning,
by a bolt of lightning, and your ship isn't set up for that kind of thing, some people say it was their donation to us.
There's another question. What is your reason? What do you think that they're abducting humans for?
Hybrid program.
That's pretty common. That's a pretty
hybrid
common
program because because that seems to be pretty common with, it doesn't matter where in the world you ask people.
Right.
It's
global.
It's global.
And do you think that the government is in some kind of cahoots with the aliens and they know about this and they're allowing it to happen and that's something they don't want to come out?
Well, maybe, or it's more likely they can't stop it. And let's say we've had UFOs for 80 years. 75. Okay, back to Roswell. Let's say we've had them. So when are we going to start having, flying saucers instead of F-16s?
Right.
It's obvious that they've never figured. If they had figured it out, then Lockheed or whoever it was would be, their stock could be trading one day at $25 and the next day at $7,000 a share.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the biggest prize in history.
Do you think they're holding on?
Hiding it.
And they're holding on. Sometimes I wonder if they're holding on to the technology that they have and they're just like filtering it out a little bit at a time so that it doesn't draw attention. Like you said, if they have all this stuff.
Yeah, you may have things like fiber optics, that was in Colonel Corso's book. But just think, just to make one UFO, you've got to have massive breakthroughs in materials, in artificial intelligence. You got, physics. I mean, it's like handing Leonardo da Vinci a 40-inch HD TV. It's just, I think it's. I remember. I've got like behind me. I've got 400 UFO books sitting there, and most of them are terrible. I hate to say, but the ones behind me are good. The ones over there are not very good. But but all this, I get this one that was, I never heard of the author. I can't remember his name now. 1950 or 49, the book came out. And he speculates at the end of it what they are. And he says, they may be 500 years ahead of us.
500.
I mean, come on now. They could be 1 billion years ahead of us. If they're from the center of the galaxy or from another dimension.
Yeah, they could be like, years doesn't even count with them,
So, but as far as what, to me, it's the evidence in front of us right now is that it's probably that the abduction program, and primitive cave dwellings, it looks like UFOs and aliens. I think it's plausible. I just don't know. I don't watch Ancient Aliens. I have enough trouble figuring out what's going on today.
I do feel like that it's this phenomenon is a lot longer than 75 years, for sure. And I think it's had I'm interested in a lot of the things that Dr. Zachariah Sitchin has proposed in his books. I think that there's some evidence for some stuff like that, as well. And I'm also fascinated with have you ever seen that stuff? Artifacts out of time, like
Sure.
battery that's, a 1,000,000-year-old battery and stuff like that. Or, I sometimes I wonder if we haven't done this a few times already and started back again from scratch. And I wonder if they, the other life forms, I don't know what to call them, aliens, extraterrestrials, extra dimensionals, have been watching us through all this.
I agree. Well, if consciousness is non-local,
mm-hmm.
which I believe it is, you don't have to be here. They would know we're here, once we develop at a certain level. So
mm-hmm.
The comment about primitive man, it's exactly the kind of stuff they do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we study animals, we study animals in the wild, ancient, civilizations that are still primitive, and try not to change it. That they'll do the same thing, I'm sure. But I'm still hung up on the fact that they're fighting so hard. They can't be fighting over nothing.
Right.
They can't,
exactly.
At the end of all this, we find out there's nothing there. Now, whether the military, you asked earlier, and I got off on a tangent, and you went with me. So,
Squirrel.
But
I didn't say I was good at this shit, Jim.
Oh no, you're great. It's fun. It's fun. Just like hanging out. And except I get to talk a little more. But now I've lost what I've joked, and now I can't think of it. I'll think of it later. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Greg's got it. Greg made a comment. What if, under what you said, like, we've done this before, what if aliens are possibly humans from those periods in time? I've thought about that too. Like,
could be.
Time travelers. I'm so into that.
I call it non-terrestrials. I don't call them ETs. They're not extra. They're not outside. They could be from another time. They could be from another dimension. They could be right from here, right next to us in another dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And so I use the term through both my books as non-terrestrial. I don't use that in general conversation because most people don't know what I'm talking about. But if you're reading a book, after the 15th time, you've sort of figured it out. Yeah. Whether the military was involved. I'm sorry.
That's right.
I have problems with that because I don't believe it couldn't happen, but it's really hard to sort through stuff whenever there's something called screen memories.
Right.
What you see, some people see 6-foot rabbits. I don't think it's a race of 6-foot rabbits coming to visit us.
Mm-hmm. Some people see owls,
Oh, that's me.
That's yeah. Yeah. I want to ask you, before we get going, I want to ask you about some of your experiences that's like the beginning of this, when you, what led you to this point, because you said you're an experiencer as well as an attorney.
Well,
you don't talk too much about it.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I helped Yvonne Smith publish her book Chosen, mm-hmm. and I wrote one chapter in there about myself, so I'd never have to talk about it again.
Now I'm asking you all about
No, but everyone does. Everyone does. And but looking back in my childhood, I can put two and two together. But when I was 16, I was playing basketball in a neighbor's backyard, and it was, it was just a little half court, but they're all in the varsity basketball team or at our school or another one. And so, I was just the lousy athlete in the group. And it was April, and it was still chilly, not for you guys, but for California people, it was chilly. And so I'm walking back home, just bathed in sweat, skinny kid, playing basketball for 2 hours. And I'm about ready to turn down my street to go home. And I got thinking, I had to go just hang out in the park, because we had a park that they were building. And so I went and laid down on the grass, only the grass was just starting and it was basically mulch. And so here I was sweaty and I lay down on the mulch. Now, what a stupid thing to do. Haven't been doing drugs, haven't been drinking, playing basketball and drinking water. So I start looking over the houses, and I know the area very well. And geographically, I'm pretty good. I'm the one that can get you there without, I hate the new direction, because now I can't say, oh, you need to go around this corner, but they have machines that do that now. But I look up and I see over by a municipal airport that's closed at night up in the hills, off about 5 miles away, 4 to 5 according to Google Maps. Now I've measured out. I see it's a bright starlit night, moonless starlit night. I see something moving, and I'm going, what is that? It was lenticular shaped, and it was, the way I could see it, it was darker than black. I mean, it was, it was the absence of light. It just stood out because it was this lenticular shaped thing just going along. And when there were a lot of stars that I could see, with very little smog that day. And so it's going along, and I'm going, is that a plane? No, I could hear it because it's not that far away. I know the hills behind it. I know it. Is that a plane? No. Well, what could it be? And then I realized, I thought to myself, that might be a UFO. And that, I didn't say it out loud. I just thought it. The second the millisecond I finished the word UFO, it made a 130-degree turn and started coming right towards me.
Oops.
And it was, I stood up and I lost it for a second, but then I found, and it was literally coming in a straight line right towards me. Like it was probably at 4,000 or 5,000 feet. I did calculations over this. I'm not very good at it, but I'm guessing. And so it's coming at me in a straight line, and it's getting bigger. And then it starts to pass over me. I reach down into the mulch and stuff, and there's a rock I pick up, and it's one of those skipping rocks that fits right around your finger.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing's coming over me, and it's slowing down. And when it's above me, my guess is about 100 feet up, 75 to 100 feet up. If it was 75 or 50 feet, it would have been at least 30 feet round object from below. And I threw the rock at it, thinking I had a pretty good arm at the time, thinking I could hit it. And I'm just staring at it. And I must have looked like, one of the idiots in a Steven Spielberg movie, because the rock came down. It never hit it. It came down and missed my head and my shoulder. Like it just came down like this and missed me. And I didn't even flinch. I just kept watching it.
That's bizarre.
And then all of a sudden, I think it's going to be directly behind me. And I turned around and watch it. And it came from this angle and then went straight up, then started drifted away at the same speed, only going up instead of down at the same angle. And it was going towards the San Gabriel Mountains behind me, which were probably about 5 miles away at the foothills of them. And it goes over a water tower. And that was my marker to know where it was. And then it just goes right in there and it just disappears eventually. And I'm going, wow, I saw a UFO. I mean, there's nothing. It was silent. Everything stopped. No crickets, nothing. So I go home. My dad is into UFOs, and every time I try to, we were one time coming back from a basketball game, and a helicopter flew over us while we were going home, and it was going along with the same speed as us for a while. And he swore up and down it was UFO, and I just gave up talking to him about it because it was just a helicopter.
Yeah.
Freeway noise, he couldn't hear it. And so I didn't bring it up. I just went straight to bed. I've got dirt all over me from laying on the ground, And so I just sort of forgot about it till my 30s. And then remembered it. But about 6 years ago, I asked Yvonne Smith to regress me about it. And we never got anything out of it. But I got enough from going through all of the stuff before and after I remember very well. That's the one good thing about regression. It gives you a lot of facts. Now, you may be blocked. But so I go back after she regresses me and I don't do well. I go stand at the spot. I drive on my way home to San Diego and stop in my hometown, go to that exact spot and stand there and start looking around. And I realized that the water tower, I'm turning around directly behind me to see it go to the water tower. I look and I realize the water tower is over there. So all of a sudden, I go, well, I've got that wrong. And so all of a sudden I realized later they put me back facing a different direction.
Facing in a different, I was getting ready to say, yeah. So you got missing time.
And so everything I saw is conscious memory.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a 35-foot circular object come over me and then just fly away, silent as anything. And that just doesn't happen.
Right.
And it all happened whenever I said, I'm probably running you over time. I'll shut up. Okay.
No, keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, we won't keep you much longer. It's been, it's been an hour and a half, but keep on.
But
I don't want to wear out my friend.
Well, as long as you guys, if I get sick tomorrow, I'm going to blame you guys.
See, oh my God. Shut up, Greg.
But from that point on, when I remembered that incident, I knew I couldn't change it.
Yeah.
Now, through my 30s, I tried to pretend it didn't happen, but I was taken so many times during that and started having paranormal experiences.
Yep.
To have a dead person in a 40s suit walk by you and brush, not touch you, but brush into you going by. And I got the sense he was pissed off because I was in his way. Things like that.
Yeah.
I started having paranormal experiences. And so something's going on. And it took me till I was in my mid-30s to finally admit it was going on. But I kept it quiet. I was a city attorney of Fresno, the 39th largest city at the time in the country. You're not going to come out and say, I see space aliens.
Yeah. Not if you want to keep working.
Yeah. And so I pretty much waited till later.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It
No, Greg didn't
well,
say much.
yeah, he doesn't. Normally he's the
I know.
interviewer, but you know, he's
Well, I hope
not
he feels better. I hope it
doing
gets
well.
better.
This is my
Greg,
actual first time of actually taking over and doing the actual interview, so I hope I didn't suck too bad. I'm
no,
so
you did
tickled.
great.
I'm so happy that you came to speak with us. I mean, you're just like a cornucopia of of information, and I always love it when you come to the Zero meetings and I get to hear you, you know, put your
Well, sometimes when I get talking about government stuff, it's been my life, you
mm-hmm,
know, and working with elected officials, and believe me, I've worked with, you know, you can't reach far enough to see which sides I've worked with,
mm-hmm.
because the people elect them, and you work with whoever it is, and so I get a little inside baseball when I start talking about that stuff, and it's sort of fun to have something that my two interests intersect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that you, and that's for sure. You know, this whole UFO thing, like you were born at this the right time. You know, with all this coming, when all this happening, and you're here, I'm so glad because I
It,
learned so much from you.
well, we're all here. It's intentional,
Mm-hmm.
for what's going on right now. I mean,
We've talked about it before in Zero groups. You know, we're all a little piece of the puzzle,
yep.
and the puzzle is coming together. Coming
Well,
together.
my first Zero meeting ever, um, Grant Cameron spoke at it, and he talked about calling it the Super Bowl. So we all have a piece part to play.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, some will be water boys, and some will be quarterbacks.
Yeah,
And
I'm just happy to be the water boy.
yeah, me too. So no, thanks. You let me talk. Then, a lot of the shows they they shut you up when they want to get to their agenda.
Oh no, I just wanted you to come on here and share all your knowledge with everybody because it's just priceless and it's so important. And I wanted to talk about UFO stuff. I've been out of it for a long time and I'm back into it now and I have so much to learn. I don't recognize most of these people's names and I don't recognize most of the podcasters' names even. There when Greg and I first started doing this, there was a handful of podcasts and now there's millions literally, and
Yeah,
and I don't recognize most of them and I apologize, but I do know that you're one person that I have uh, really counted on to uh, educate me on the latest happenings and I've tried to stay up on it, and I wanted to share you with our listeners. I'm being kind of greedy, but I wanted to share you with our listeners. So I'm just so happy that you were able to come and sit with us tonight. Now, hopefully you'll come back again, and
oh
I'll
sure.
try to wear you out again.
No, well, I enjoy hearing you. Well, I brought you out to California for one conference. I wanted to hear you.
I can't wait till I can come back again sometime. That would be great. So
Well, I'm retired. I don't have the money to do that kind of stuff anymore.
yeah, I know. I don't either, but the universe has a way of making things happen.
Yep.
So
Well, thanks a lot.
you're welcome. Greg,
Yeah,
are you okay?
I am okay.
You sound like poo.
Oh, well, it happens. I could have listened another hour.
Yeah, I know. I
Yeah,
could too, but I feel bad about making Jim sit there.
right.
My butt's getting sore. I know that.
Well, at my age, this is the longest I've been without going to the bathroom.
I know, right? And you know what? Your computer camera and your audio and everything's just been so smooth and perfect. It
which
really has.
which is very rare when we have shows like this.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. But anyways, thank you so much for coming on and JV in our chat room. he says to tell you thank you, that he loved the show. And
good questions.
Well, I want you to come back sometime, and I'm going to have a whole bunch more for you.
Okay, very good.
All right.
Well, yeah, but your listeners has good questions.
Yes, definitely. All righty, Greg. You're in charge. You're driving the bus, son.
All right, we're out of here. See you guys next week.
Okay, take care.
Thank you for hanging out with Midwest Paratalk Radio here on the WMPP Radio Network. You can catch Deb and Gregg on YouTube at Midwest Paratalk Radio. You can also catch us on all podcast platforms. Just search Midwest Paratalk Radio. We will see you next week.